want to echo, and then we want this, and then another go whatever is. Typically it'll be Vulkan SDK. .2, 148, whatever. Now my version of Vulkan is obviously a little bit older than the newest one released here. So, and here it, and say open with, and I do want to take a moment just Plus plugin. We definitely want to make sure that that is installed because we'll be using that heavily. I like this to-do highlight. This is a plugin that highlights to-do text and a various color in your code so that you can actually see it, so it stands out a little bit better. And I'm also using the Groovebox themes, the dark hard theme that is in here. So you'll want to go ahead and at least at the very minimum install this C++ extension. The others are optional, but this one's super important. Also, this shader languages support one is pretty important as well. So the very first thing we're going to want to do is create a new folder, and we're going to call it engine. Under that, we're going to create another new folder and call it source. Again, this is all going to be available on the repository. So this is our build script for the and then the file names. We pass our compiler flags. We want to create a important the source vulkan1 okay of which we do. So just and this is going to include some basic type information that we're going to need to know. So again, I am actually going to types of data, paste in some code here. Basically, we're one unsigned long. We just an 8-bit integer. Boolean. We make assertion size of the static assert macro basically us, and I'm not going to find throw an or define now, but we use how next code. And if you guys aren't using VS Code, you can actually skip this step, but otherwise you're going to need it. CPP underscore properties, because I'll go over it quickly. Well, Windows setup, which basically says our include path is the sort of the same thing. Include actually pick up on it. Debug to that completion. Our compiler path is basically where LLVM on your PC stands. If we ever need that for some reason. But the Linux version looks almost identical, so this will just sort of help us to skip this step and IntelliSense. And this is simply a list of recommended extensions. So the extensions that I pointed out to you in here will recommend that I use in this key bounding. We'll add another folder to that called source, and to the testbed folder we are going to add a new file, and we're going to call this build.bat. And again, I'm just going to paste some code in here. This is almost exactly the same as the engine one, except this one is going to be to build the test bed. So the only difference here is the name of the assembly that it outputs. We are not building it as a shared. Going to be just going to paste some code in here. This is almost a bed folder. We are going to add a new file, and we're going to call this. This is almost exactly the same as the engine one, except this one is going to be to build the test bed. So the only difference is it's one of the reasons time file names executable and then everything else. So the last folder all.bat. And then it pushes a directory, so it basically says switch to this directory, which is the engine. So it goes into this engine folder, calls build.bat, and then pops back out of the directory. And then this line here basically says if the build process returned anything other than 0, then we want to actually abort this script. So if the build failed with errors for some reason, it's not actual just thing test or test a simply, and then we'll just want to create in test need void test. Also going to just going to percent on. I know you just are now changing test out of engine.source. So I figured it's very important to actually point that out. And the next thing is our actual entry point itself will be a int main, and it's not going to take any arguments whatsoever. So I'll just leave void there, and we are going to call our function here that we exported, our printInt function, right? So we can say printInt, and we'll pass it 42. 42 is a good number, and return 0. Return 0 simply means success, right? So this should be everything that we need, I believe, to actually go ahead and build our project. So let's go ahead and press Control-Shift-B. And it looks like we have an error here. Cannot find bin engine DLL. Okay, so I'm guessing The reason is because we don't actually have a bin folder, so we'll get one of these. Okay, and then we also, and so if we look here in our main.c, I'm actually going to set a breakpoint of clicking, and I'll go ahead and this command 5. Red dot shows up, and I'll go ahead and press F5. And now we are looking output everything here. Debug that is important files. Oh, okay. So go ahead and press Control Shift B. So let's go ahead and turn 0. Control Shift B. So let's go ahead and press Control Shift B. And it looks like we have, I'm guessing, it's saying it cannot open file, bin engine DLL, and the reason is because we don't actually have a bin folder, so we'll need to create that. So in the base folder here, we'll say new folder, bin, and then Control Shift B again. Okay, and it built successfully. So if we expand this bin folder, folder. So at least I mentioned, but engine, if we actually get one of these, and I've taken other library information. So the next thing we sped everything look here in our main.c for this. And now we are that just by sort of clicking over here in the gutter where this red dot shows up, and I'll go ahead and press F5. And now we are looking at our debugger. So we get this window, this .c, and now we are looking at our debugger. So we get this this window top of the point here. Call our DLL F11 present in our DLL. We see that it is in fact 42, which is what we passed from our executable. So the next thing I'm going to do here is call printf, which is a function that allows us to print text to the console. And this is basically going to print out the number is, and then whatever the number is, bug actually printed out the number is, how it works under the hood. Select my console window again, and you'll see here that it has not. So we continue into that, or we step into that rather. I actually prefer it. Function into past call 10 care how I'm actually going to do. So my console window again. And so I'm going to go ahead and continue the application, which is going to finish the execution because we have actually finished executing this. Go here that a function that is present in DLL. So if I press it in, the executable is going to call. We have actually stopped the execution of the application at line 4 in main.c because we set a breakpoint here. So this little yellow thing here in the highlighted line shows us where we are currently waiting to execute the next line of code. Okay, and so this is next going to call our print int from our test.h that is in our DLL. Click so that is from our executable. That is in fact 40. We step in function that is present in our. We hover over I. We see that it is in fact 42, which is what we passed from our printf, which is a function print out the number is and then whatever the number is. So I'm going to press F10 to actually step over that, which means I don't want to step into and debug printf because I don't really care how it works under the hood. I just want to step over that. So I'm going to press F10. Is 42 applications. We have actually see Linux side of things in the next video, and we will perform the same Linux setup on that side, and I'll walk you guys through that. So hello everybody, and welcome back to
my work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything I need to get.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. Released build, we would not be outputting anything for debug, and the same is seems like a lot of setup, but it's okay that we're defining. Depending necessarily want to do that in a release build. So these two. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Well, really that, and some of you had alluded to this in the comments to the. So the first one is startup. So as I mentioned before, one of the things that we have to do right off the bat is to create our internal state, right? And so since we have basically the method that's going to do that. Now you'll notice that we have not actually declared this yet. So we'll come back to that in just a sec. A feeling for logic in there to handle our platform, have a successful return from that. That we'll go ahead and run at this point would return true. And so for this is going to be, let's just actually matter. What matters is that the return type game state, and aligned, we're just going to say false. Okay. And again, alignment is not something that we should have to care about in user code. It's something I've not explained yet. I realize that. So just take this at initialization configuration file. But again, we don't have that stuff for now. So for now, for a moment, a game engine and some of its common systems. So a game engine will have systems such as input entry in the array. Okay, so being able to push our field set length and sets it to the array, and we copy the value that's in value pointer to that new address in memory. So in other words, we move X number of twice and then only unregister once, and then feature. So the next thing that we're going to want to define is keys on the keyboard. And this is where it can get a little bit monotonous to define this thing, because as you can imagine, there's over 100 keys on your keyboard, and having to define each one of those things one by one is kind of monotonous and error prone. And so what I actually am going to do in this case is I'm going to make a quick macro that allows us to define a key. And we pass the name and the code. And this prepends a key underscore to the name and then sets it equal to a code. Okay? And we're basically going to create an enumeration, and then for each line of the enumeration, we're going to call this define key, which will actually spit this out for us. So next, I'm going to paste in a giant enumeration that we're going to call keys. And as you can see here, we have a bunch of them defined. Now, what are all these codes? What do these things mean? Where did I get these from? Well, if we take a quick look at a website that I use quite often called ASCIIchart.com, it gives us a basic listing of some of the ASCII character codes that are used, as well as what their decimal is, all these subtract. So common code. I'm not going to walk through these. One will definitely cover us for that key and say if it's equal to pressed, or if it's not equal to pressed rather, then we know we have a change in I need to kind of give my best first. So we have no flags. We do have UBO size, UBO stride. What am I not seeing here? This is a version 1 material, which does make sense. Hello everyone, and open image and new tab. Here we go. All right, so one of the first things it's going to look for is the existence of that in the file to make sure that it's actually a Cohe binary file. Now there are others of these too. There's like a 0x or a 2D single texture, right? Oh, you know what? We need, wait a minute. We need 2 versions of this. I can't necessarily do that because there's 2 code paths here, right? So part of this needs to go through this callback. part of this needs to happen if we have pixel data. We'll see if that helps. Right? But on Windows, we actually have an escape sequence that is carriage return line feed on Windows only. So if we're dealing with Windows screenshots here, just to kind of show you what the engine looks like, I can't run it right now because my local code is, as you saw, busted. But we have shadow capability. So we have what we call system fonts that uses true type fonts, and then we also have, of course, I would appreciate any follows on the YouTube or Twitch channels. I'm trying to grow this, and the whole goal here is basically to motivate people to get into wanting to build game engines instead of using something out of the box, because I think that the more competition we have in this space, the more that drives ingenuity and moving forward as an industry. So I think it's nothing but a good thing to motivate people to do that, and that's my goal here. So I hope that all makes sense. Let's see. Another question about OpenEL. It has a LGPL license, so I guess I cannot distribute my game as a single exe, right? Yeah, you have to just you can't statically link to it, I think is what the issue is. You have to dynamically link to it. You can distribute it along with it, but it has to be like a separate thing. You can't like roll it or embed it into your logic, right? Into your code, your binary. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to explain, or you have to distribute it separately. So we'll have to figure that out, because that's what we're using, right? But Fmod is kind of the same way as far as I'm aware, and that's another sound plugin that we're going to wind up developing at some point to use Fmod. But that's probably a little ways off. Anyway, like I said, it is a little bit late. I know we got a late start tonight, unfortunately, because my technical issues that I ran into earlier. But sometimes that is the way it is. We've got to have a little bit of shorter stream tonight, unfortunately. We will be back tomorrow, though. So if you guys haven't already, make sure to follow me and click the little notification thing so that you can see when I go live. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. And yeah, let's see if we can find somebody to go ahead and raid. Thank you guys for the follows. Let's see. I want to see if there's something that's loosely related to what we're doing. And once again, I do want to thank you for the raid. I do appreciate the raid. Unfortunately, we were just getting ready to wrap up for the night as well, so timing sometimes can be a bear. Let me go same category. Not looking like there's a lot of I mean, there's some game dev stuff here. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys over to Hypnotic Games. He's a relatively new streamer. He's trying to grow his channel, so I'd like to support that however I can. So we're going to go ahead and shoot you guys over there. Thank you guys again so much for joining me, and yeah, we'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll see if we can get a little bit further, right? Maybe even get it up and running. So, all right, thanks guys. See ya.